Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Lynn Williams, Mershman Seeds Area Sales Manager, joins us to talk soybean and corn yields. Grain markets for harvest are looking optimistic. What's the outlook for spring? Demand for Enlist E3 soybeans is strong, and so is our seed supply. Send us a harvest photo for a chance to be featured on our social media.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. Again, you can watch it or you can listen to it by podcast. So today we have Turk and we have a new person. Ben's off today, so we have Lynn. Lynn Williams is local area sales manager and brought him in today to give the local perspective and just describe where, well, it's actually part of Missouri too, so go ahead.
Yeah, so we're seeing some really good yields come out of some products that we, preliminary starting to get into. Bean harvest has really ramped up, I would say, in the last week. Some of them I just wanted to highlight. The new Cheyenne, we're hearing reports that they're 5 to 8 bushels above the old Cheyenne. What we're getting with that is we're getting better branching. It's a little bit taller. Just two observations that Ben had said maybe we want to watch it for standability, but overall we're definitely moving forward with that new variety compared to the old one. So it's exciting to see that the breeding has moved forward and we're getting better yields out of these new products. With that, the Arthurs, we're getting great reports out of that one as well. It's an option that we are moving forward with and getting rid of the Hayes and the Harrisons. And in a split field situation, it was running 10 to 15 bushels above those old Harrisons. So kudos to you guys for picking those varieties and moving forward with those.
And they've been doing very well too.
Yeah, it looks like it handled the stress really well. Mm-hmm. In the environments that I would say north central Iowa, where we're dealing with stress conditions, they're showing extremely well. Which, some of that has to do with the plant. It's a decently bushed plant. It's got a pretty decent height to it. So if we do get some shrink back with the drought situations, it looks like it's handling it very, very well.
This is one of those years where we had a little bit of everything in different areas, so it's a really good opportunity to observe these varieties and see how they perform in different situations.
Well, I've had texts from growers on Apaches doing quite well. Kennedys, I mean, it's like they've never seen yields, best yields ever. Jefferson's, I've heard the same thing. McKinley's, and then of course I've been following the new products, which Ben has a huge crop of new products that we're growing seed production of. And one farmer told me best beans he's ever seen. It's a new 3.6. We're trying to challenge that Kennedy placement, which is so strong. And can we find a better product than Kennedy? Well, this one here, he was showing me snapshots of 92 bushel average on his farm so far. So again, we said we weren't going to talk a lot about yield, and the reason why is because every company can come up with big numbers. It's really about placement and getting the right product on the farm to maximize yield. Also got some calls from the severe drought areas, and they're still talking mid-50s with some of our products, which they're elated because I think they were thinking 30s, and maybe 40s. So in general, I think soybean yields, as far as the Enlist trait platform, has been very, very strong this year.
For sure.
And we talked a little bit about that last week, I should say, about the difference between the Extend platform architecture of the plant versus, and you mentioned that a little bit too, versus the Extend Flex. A lot of their products are more single stem with pods hanging on that single stem, where we're single stem plus branches. And I think this year it's really showing an advantage to our architecture.
Yeah, that's the ones that we've discussed here all have that in their characteristic for sure. The McKinleys are one that we definitely see it get branchy in situation on 30-inch rows that likes to stretch out. And I would equate that to, it's a 3.2 version of the 3.6 Kennedy. It seems like the placement on that and how it kind of adapts to field situations is very similar. We can put it on maybe a tougher piece of dirt and it'll yield extremely well. But then also if it gets put on, something with a little bit of a run, we're seeing a top end yield that is that as well.
Lynn, you are correct. Kennedy and McKinley share a common parent. So if you're used to one, you can go to the other. The only difference is maturity. I mean, basically.
Yeah. Another exciting portion that we've had, I guess, to our lineup is we've gotten guys that also have gotten started into corn. On the corn side of it, we're seeing maybe a little bit more of a push toward our longer season. Hybrids are doing quite well. Our earlier ones, like the 9714, has been a really good number for us. This year, it's still doing extremely well, but maybe we're seeing just a little bit more push on the later seasons. And a lot of that has to do, what we're noticing is with the grain fill. The 9714, maybe just not quite as much as the 9709, which 9709 would be related to that 9714. And the other issue too is dry down has been extremely fast this year. Hearing reports of guys that are in the 13.5 to 14% on corn. The wettest one that I've been to so far, and checked, was our 117-day variety, and it was already down to 20%. So all this April planted stuff has been extremely fast on this dry down, and it kind of leads me into this tar spot situation that we're having as well. There was an article that came out in the Pro Farmer talking about, a really good article talking about tar spot and the detrimental effects that it's having, especially over in Illinois. And what they're seeing with that is we have basically condensed 30 days worth of dry down into 7 to 10 days. And a lot of these hybrids, in particular, a competitor's hybrids, have a lot of their grain fill comes within that last 30 days. So
we have a link to that article, so you can read it yourself, and they'll tell you which competitor that's really suffering this year. You can look at it and exactly what you're saying. When you lose that last 30 days, that's when the yields suffer.
So there's a few surprises out there when they thought they had really, really good corn that really got hurt the last 2 weeks of fill, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. And by and large, I would say too, test weights this year just aren't quite up to what, and I'm hearing this across, multiple brands. It's not a Stein issue. It's a geography issue that test weights just aren't quite there. And some of that has to do, with this tar spot as we're getting into, the peak grain fill time where we're putting on that test weight. This stuff is being massively affected by it. And tar spot is one of the, it's a scary one for us because what I've been told by BASF rep was once you have it, you're stuck with it, and once the plant exhibits the tar spot, we're already too late. Basically, at that point, we're putting on fungicide to keep it from absolutely devastating the plant. Around here, in my area, I think we caught it late enough that the fungicide applications were able to keep the plant going through that grain fill period, and yields weren't affected like they are over on the other side of the river with that. But it is definitely something that we need to, definitely keep a close eye on, as we're picking hybrids or picking, brands that, looking at the susceptibility, looking at potentially when that grain fill period is, and finding out how we can maximize our profit on that end of it. So it's definitely, for my area, it's a problem that 2018 was when they thought it kind of came to the area, but it hadn't really been an issue. And this year it definitely became an eye-opening experience for a lot of guys.
And we have some southern leaf rust too that came in late in most of our areas. So the 1-2 punch, you might say.
Mm-hmm. And then there's a big difference in fungicides too, which one you used on what kind of longevity you had
for sure
out there in that field, which again came into effect on a lot of this as well.
But in general, we're seeing some good corn yields in areas, and we're seeing incredible soybean yields with the Enlist E3 platform. Just incredible. A lot of best ever yields on my farm, and I think that's the takeaway. And then as far as our varieties go, we're not seeing anything that's not matched up that's not doing well. So, and we got better ones coming. That's the best part. We got better ones coming.
I think that was one of the exciting things we had talked about yesterday a little bit. Was I went and looked at a particular variety that we have that is going to be potentially going to the wayside. So I spent one day in the combine in the morning with a guy as he was harvesting it, and that afternoon went out and took the weigh wagon to check the variety that's potentially changing it and or taking its spot. And the difference between the two and how we're moving forward was as a salesman and as a farmer, getting to know what we're getting ready to put out there, it should be extremely exciting.
Very good. Turk, what do you have for us this week?
Not a lot going on in the markets, Joe, right now. One of the things that really need to be aware of, and most farmers are, taking stuff out of the combine. A lot of people don't have the bin storage, and so they're going to be taking some of these beans to town, but the basis is staying very strong, which usually means that the buyers or the commercials know something that we don't, and they're wanting to get seed or get grain in inventory for expected demand coming down the pipe. So I think that's the biggest thing that farmers need to be aware of is, we have really good basis, and don't be afraid to sell some of this crop right off the combine if you're in an area that has great basis.
Well, that was last year too. If you remember, when beans hit $10, we were flying high and thought, we're doing well. Well, it ended up at 17. So, but the basis was real strong in harvest too, just like last year. So, we're going to have a repeat?
Don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the numbers all shake out and what the export projections end up being. But I think the expectation is that we're going to have continued strong demand for the next year, barring some kind of a government disaster changing everything for us, which can happen.
Well, and that leads us, to our discussion we had last week too, is about input costs. And with input costs going up and fertilizer costs, in particular in chemicals, what we're talking about, that's going to weigh in on who's going to plant corn, who's going to plant beans, and then there's going to be a fight somewhere down the line because we're hearing a lot of farmers saying, I'm going to plant beans or wheat, and that means it's coming maybe out of that corn acre. So then they're going to have to get aggressive to try to get some more corn acres. So that could bring both products up as it usually does.
If you can get the product, today's prices to put in an acre of corn is going to run around $1,000 an acre. That's going to take $5 corn, 200 bushel for break even. So those are some pretty stout numbers.
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yeah. So there's going to be a shift towards soybeans because there's putting in an acre of soybeans is considerably less. Again, if you can get the inputs, it takes a little bit less input, so you don't need that nitrogen. But the issue is still going to be what is going to be the spring price, because the corn market is going to have to compete for acres to get acres. We know corn's short as well. So at some point, corn's got to come up or beans got to go down, one of the two.
I agree, Turk, and the costs out there are going to be all over the board. And because I know on the fertilizer side, there's a lot of dealers that go ahead and prepay, put hard money up. They put it up earlier in the summer for products, so they've got their products at a lower cost. And then, of course, if they run out of that supply, they're going to have to raise their prices. So, and then the same thing with when you talk about chemicals and whatnot. We're hearing all the crazy stuff, but there was some good deals that were done, and some of these retailers have things under control, and so the farmer may not see, if you got your relationship and buying from someplace for 20, 30 years, you're probably going to be in a much better situation than the guy that puts out the bid. And same thing what Joe Sinclair told us last week, and I totally agree with that.
Yep. So bottom line, just as we said before, get them bought, get them in the shed.
Well, anything else, Turk, for us?
Nope.
Okay, I just got a few comments here. I talked about the yield thing, but we do market research every year with a firm, just try to make sure we're reading the market correctly. And again, as we poll farmers, we find out that yield is the number one characteristic or most important thing when it comes to purchasing their seed products. So, yield is, and that's what we work on. I mean, that's ultimately what we do from seed treatments to genetics and constantly moving forward. And, MS Tech has a unique ability to run large numbers, looking for that 1 in a billion, you know, as the theoretical number that's out there to try to find the best products. But what's interesting is in the last year, though, there's been a big change in the interest in traits and genetics, and technology has been increasing. So yield has always been number one, but traits, genetics, and technology is increasing. And I really think that has to do with Enlist E3 platform coming on the marketplace. That, you know, some farmers now, they have choices, and so they're looking at that other option. Another thing that warmed my heart a little bit is that farmers prefer to do business with family-owned companies. That's their number one choice over the corporate giants. Interesting, when we polled farmers and asked them, you know, what do you think for your acres for next year as far as soybean traits? 42% said Enlist E3, 6% said LLGT 27s, 4% said conventionals. Well, you add those numbers all up, that means that the platforms that Mershman Seeds represents, the Enlist and LLGT 27s, will be equal or slightly higher than the competing platform that we compete against. So acres are shifting more towards the Enlist platform. Right now, doesn't surprise me when they ask farmers what's front and center on your radar right now. It's input costs, commodity prices, and weather. Well, I think that is not a surprise. It's every year, right? But the bottom line is that the other statistic that we found is that when it comes to customer loyalty, and this is what I'm very, very pleased, we have some great customers. I mean, they're just great people. When it comes to customer loyalty, Mershman Seeds ranks number one in the industry compared to the multinationals and some of the larger regionals. So we appreciate that you're so loyal to us, and it's vice versa too. We're very loyal to you, and we do our best. And I know with this COVID thing going on, and it seems like everything that we try to buy is either short or scarce. There is no seed shortage from Mershman Seeds, okay? All of the Stein seed corn has been harvested. It's in the bins. Yields were good. Quality were good. We're getting our seed in right now from our seed growers. Yields are great. Seed size in some varieties a little bit smaller, some about the same, but overall looks like we're going to have good supply. Initial eyeballing the quality looks like the germs are going to be very good. So again, don't forget, we improved our seed treatment for 2022 by adding an additional fungicide to give you better Pythium and seedling phytophthora control too. So we're switching with the times, constantly changing, constantly improving, and that's the name of the game. So that brings us to the corny jokes. And last week I did a couple cow jokes, so I said better bring a horse joke in, you know, because we keep the balance here. Now, what's black and white and eats like a horse? What's black and white and eats like a horse? A zebra.
A zebra.
That's almost funny. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, you know the pharaohs, you know, they were the kings in Egypt, right? Okay. How did the pharaohs become so wealthy? They were running huge pyramid schemes. See? See?
I like that one.
Okay. Well, that one there came from my son Jeff, so I need all the help I can get. Well, thanks for watching this week or listening. If you're in the combine, we appreciate your business. We're working hard to help you increase your yields and your bottom line profitability, and we can't wait to see you next week. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe.